pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll, Atlantis.
Water towers can fly!
Yes! Tango Delta nominal.
Flight outside feed off. Bring in, feed off. Off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Let's see here, folks. You know the drill. Let us know. Can you hear us right now? It's time for another NASA Spaceflight Live. And can you see our cameras as well? Hi, we should be here. Let me know. Give me a 5x5 in chat over here. I can see myself apparently, and I get a ton of 5x5s in chat, so that means we should be good to go. Here for another exciting episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. You know how it is. We do our weekly show here where we talk about the space news of the week. Clearly a lot of interesting, to put it lightly, things to talk about this week. And we're going to do some Q&A. We're going to do some talking about the different news items, and we're going to do some commentary about all sorts of different topics. Lots to cover today. So let's go ahead and get started with introducing our hosts here for the first time on NASA Spaceflight Live. Y'all give a big warm NASA Spaceflight welcome to Matt. Matt Anderson, how you doing, dude?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to see what a warm NASA Spaceflight welcome is. I'm a little frightened by that. The answer is 25, by the way, 5 by 5.
Thank you for the help. I
What
think
about people
warm
seem
welcome
confused?
involves like rocket engines usually, which could be slightly a bit of a problem. But anyways,
Thanks,
welcome to
Doc.
the show. You've seen, or you've heard Matt's voice on some of our streams before, and he is back for his debut camera appearance on NSF Live here. So also, folks, here with the stream today is Chris Gebhardt. You've seen Chris before. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I hope you've seen me before. If not, welcome.
I like how you had to think about that. You were like, I guess I'm okay. So
Yeah, like, sometimes you have to think about it. No.
all right. So y'all, Chris, Matt, and myself, John Galloway here, will be talking about what's going on. Like I said, this is our live show. So over the course of the show, we have different topics we're going to be covering. A lot of interesting stuff today. Of course, Blue Origin hiring some artists for some infographics, apparently. Things going on with Starship. Big news from Boeing on OFT2. We're going to be running all that down. If you've got questions for us, tag us in chat at NASA Spaceflight. Goes into some cool software that we have, and we'll try to get answers to relevant questions. Now, if you ask, how are the catch arms going to work for Starship? And we're talking about OFT2, we're probably going to hold that question for later or maybe not get to it, but we try to get relevant questions to the topic that we're talking about as we go over the course of the show. So if we miss your question, it's not that we've ignored it completely. It's just try to keep the questions relevant to what we're talking about. You got a higher chance of getting them on the show. Also, if you do a super chat or something like that, the super chats go into a queue as well, and we will be reading those out on a... Is that for real? Chris, can you confirm that the super chat queue has updated right now?
Oh, sure. Look.
Jerwa, thank you for the $100 super chat to kick off the show there.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Out of the gate.
That's lovely.
Jerwa, thank you.
Speaking of super chats, I'll put this one up on the screen real quick. Jerwa said, in honor of my 1-year membership, I upgraded today and thanking the team for all they do. Jerwa, thank you so much for the support, like literally kicking off the stream there.
He knows we're not the ones selling tickets to space, right?
It's just saying thanks to the NASA Spaceflight team so we can keep doing this. Please do not expect to receive a ticket to space or anything like that for your super chats. Good point there, Matt. Massive thanks there, Jerwa, kicking off the stream. We've seen that name before. It's not the first time you've done it, but 1 year of membership. We really appreciate you there. Just like that, y'all, there's a new membership from Jerwa as well. Musical Wolves, exactly, coming in as well. Like I see the super chats, I'm going to leave those in the queue for now, but we'll read some out just to say thank you because we're able to do these shows because of your support. Whether you're doing super chats or retweeting things or letting ads roll, whatever it is, y'all make this possible. It's why we show up on Saturdays. That's why we're able to show up, right, Chris? Because we can afford to show up.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Whew. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about our topics today, starting off with the big news from Boeing. Chris?
Well, it wasn't the news that Boeing was hoping that they would be able to share with us. And it definitely was not the August that Boeing wanted. But yeah, Starliner's issues. So Starliner had originally been targeting a launch on the 30th of July. However, when the Nauka module underwent its eventful docking to the International Space Station on the 29th, there was no way realistically that Starliner could launch the next day because of all of the just because of all the reviews that they would need to do with the International Space Station to make sure it was correct and to make sure that Nauka was actually passivated the way that it needed to be. This threw them to the 3rd of August, and unfortunately, on the 2nd of August, after they had rolled out to the pad, the dreaded intense afternoon Florida thunderstorms rolled through. And this is pretty much, and the reason I mention that, because it's probably where you're like, Chris, have you just gone off the deep end into the land of nostalgia and you're telling us things about how the rocket worked? No, actually, the storm might be important here because on launch day, on the 3rd, when they went to cycle 13 oxygen valves in the service module, and these valves need to be opened for the propulsion systems to work for abort, for orbital maneuvering, for orbital insertion, and everything like that. 13 of those oxygen valves would not open when they were commanded to.
Like stuck.
Like stuck.
Physically wouldn't open.
Physically stuck and would not open when commanded to do so. And they went through an initial round of troubleshooting while the Atlas was fueling and counting down, but very quickly realized this is not, we can't get them open, we can't fly. And since the 13th, over the last 11 days now, 10 days yesterday when they made the decision, they had rolled the Atlas back to the vertical integration facility. They'd been really working with these valves, and the teams really did a good job of being as hands-on with this system as they physically could, because they're not actually designed to really be accessed when mated to the Atlas V. So they had to work around some of those issues as well. But they managed to get 9 of the 13 of them to open and unstick. But 4 they could not, before they basically ran out of time because of the Atlas V's manifest. And we'll get back to the Atlas V manifest in a few minutes. But basically, and I'm sure there are questions about the Atlas manifest as well from people watching. But basically, what they've found in the course of their investigation so far, according to the media telecon they had yesterday, is that the current thought is that water vapor and just moisture from the intense humidity got into the propulsion system. So not rain, but just moisture, just the physical humidity, condensation in the atmosphere seeped in, which they said is actually something that you would kind of expect from this system. And that some of it would actually seep in through the seals and mix with the nitrogen tetroxide and create a sticky little acid that could corrode the valves. But usually this happens with such infrequency or with so little humidity that when you command the valves to open, they still bang open, right? They break that seal. But for whatever reason, the leading theory right now is that so much water vapor got in there and reacted so much with that nitrogen tetroxide that enough acid was formed that they just could not get those valves unstuck.
They just completely physically froze them shut. So not a software issue?
Not a software issue. Not a software issue on this one. No. And unfortunately for Boeing, because I know this is the other question that's coming. Unfortunately for Boeing too, these valves worked perfectly in the C3PF when they cycled them as part of the pre-rollout and pre-integration checkouts in the Commercial Crew and Cargo Processing Facility, or C3PF as it is called. And these valves worked perfectly on OFT-1. These valves were not anything or any part of the issues that the first OFT mission had. So the fact that it popped up was truly one of those wow, that was surprising and not something that they missed during testing, not something, at least right now from what we know, it's not anything like that. Unfortunately, Atlas V only has one launch pad on the East Coast.
41.
Right. It has Slick 41, which has to manage both Starliner crew missions or uncrewed test flights to the International Space Station and the rest of the Atlas V manifest for the rest of the year, which includes an interplanetary mission called Lucy for NASA. which has a 22-day window, which opens on October 16th. And that has a higher priority than Starliner. Because if it misses that 22-day launch window, it's at least another year, maybe more, before Earth and the asteroid targets realign with one another for an acceptable transfer window for the Lucy mission. So there's a stand down for that until at least November, but then the International Space Station has a Crew 2, Crew 3 swap in early November. And then the Soyuz Soyuz MS-19 and MS-20 crew flights are on the docket for October and December as well. So exactly where, and there are cargo resupply missions with the Dragon capsules, CRS-23 and CRS-24. That are out there on the manifest as well, and the for the Falcon 9 side, and the Atlas also has 2 U.S. Space Force missions with USF-8 and USF-12, both in quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2021 right now. So where exactly Starliner gets a manifest slot is going to be tricky here for the next few months.
The car broke down and they had to push it to the shoulder because there's too much traffic.
Pretty much.
I mean, you don't want to hold everything up. You're not wrong with the analogy there. Like, that is sort of a huge deal. So I want to make the comment. I mean, definitely a huge deal. Like Starliner not flying is a problem, and they came across the problem because all of the processing for it is done in the traditional way. Clean rooms, controlled environments, all this sort of stuff. And then once it was taken outside and had that real Florida weather hit it, they had a problem with the valves, getting humidity, getting stuck, et cetera, et cetera. It almost is a case for building your spacecraft outside in a field somewhere, because you would have caught that well in advance, right?
Well,
that sounds like the opposite of a clean room.
It is the opposite of a clean room. I mean,
the total opposite. When the lightning storm like that all three of us are experiencing right now in different parts of the country.
Yeah, true story, by the way.
Yeah, true story. But yeah, I mean, there are definitely advantages to building in a clean room.
Right.
And this is a good point that you bring up, Das, about like you build everything in a clean room and then you haul it out to the pad, and weather, how did you not think of it? Well, they did think of it, right? I mean, and to be fair to Boeing, the storms that they were sort of contending with at the end of July and the beginning of August here in Florida were much stronger and much more intense than our typical lazy afternoon Florida thunderstorm. I mean, these were intense, hail producing, sometimes tornado producing thunderstorms that we got. So there's a difference between the weather we normally get and the weather we got. Right.
Right.
And as they said, this was part of the design, right? They had anticipated it, just not to the degree that it happened. But it's worth noting that it's not the first time we've had valve issues on vehicles as well. And it's not the first time we've had to haul something out to the launch pad to go, oh, oops, maybe we need a cover over that. The reaction control system thrusters on the space shuttles were notorious for stuck valves or sticky valves for this exact same reason, that moisture and humidity would get into them and react with the nitrogen tetroxide and cause some of this. But normally, and so they started putting covers over the thermal protection system over the
thrusters.
There's so many things to talk about, and TPS is one of them for a different vehicle.
So I know that like Twitter's reaction to all this was Boeing delayed. I'm shocked, but there is precedent for this sort of thing before, and it's not entirely fair to completely throw them under the bus on this.
I would agree with that. This is not what I think was very fair criticism of them after OFT1, where it was, well, wait a minute, why didn't you do end-to-end testing? And if you required it for the other provider, why didn't you require it for this provider, right? And I mean, there were some very valid criticisms for what happened on OFT1, but then there were also things that popped up that were sort of wrapped up in what happened that were very much like, oh, well, there was really no way you could have known that until you flew it. Like they're badly timed and overlapping communication issue that was literally just they needed to point the antenna like 2 degrees higher in relation to the horizon, because cell phone interference was a bit more than but it happened right at the same time when you needed that critical, there were so many overlaps of things on that one that sort of disentangling what was valid criticism and what was oh yeah, you had to fly it to fix it and find it. It was a little hard, but you're exactly right there, Matt. Like this was something that really does, at least right now with what we know, appear to be a wow, who could have predicted that strong of a thunderstorm, that intense, that would leave that much humidity in the air afterward?
It's also sort of good that it happened now, and I hate to say that because I want to see Starliner fly, and I know that Boeing wants to see Starliner fly, but this was sort of a fluke. I mean, Starliner could have gone out to the pad, no huge humidity like thunderstorm system comes through, they launch just fine, and we don't find this problem. But instead, that specific situation happened where enough humidity got into that system that it was a real problem that necessitates all the way back to the VIF, not only all the way back to the VIF, but unstacking it so that you can get it all these valves and repair them, replace them. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I'm glad that they found it on this launch as opposed to astronauts sitting in the rocket and the valves are stuck because it rained the day before.
Well, find it now, because it's not just a matter of astronauts sitting on the pad, right? Because like the good thing about this is like those valves have to be open for the propulsion systems to work. So it's not like this could have been we got to orbit and found it and oh no, we can't deorbit the vehicle. No, they have to be open before you launch. So like on one hand, good. You are always going to find this problem before it happened, before it became an issue in flight. The biggest thing for me, but because I agree with you, Das, and Matt, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this too, is it's not just that astronauts would be sitting there, it's that if this were a regular crew rotation flight, let's say this were crew 3, and the valve issue happens, and you're now facing a multi-month delay with a crew on orbit with a spacecraft that's running out of certification time that has to come back, and no other spacecraft sitting here to launch them, and now we're talking about bringing the ISS crew back down to 3 instead of 7.
It's still a problem.
Like,
saying that okay, this is sort of a reasonable fluke is not going, oh, it's okay, buddy, it's fine, you'll do better next time. Like there's still issues to work out there, and Boeing has had its people have been following what's been going on with Boeing. So they have a little bit of soul searching to do there, but this one at least a little bit when it happened. Lucky that it happened now, I think, even though we're just going to push it back to whoever, but that's okay because they have other things to work out in the meantime anyway. So, like spacesuits.
Yes, the other thing we should talk about another vehicle as well.
let me do this. I mean, we could sit here and talk about OFT2. I mean, of course, OFT1 happened and there were issues there, and then a long time later, OFT2 has still not happened for various reasons. We know that they need to get this thing launched. I don't think Starliner's going anywhere yet. It's not like, well, throw up your hands, we give up on Starliner. Like clearly Boeing still has skin in the game here. But some questions really quickly that I want to grab relevant to this, then we'll go on to the next topic. And this is a big one. We talked about the space shuttle having some issues with valves, but Jonathan Tanner is throwing into chat, how do you think this compares to the Dragon explosion, which was also caused by leaky valves combined with unknown factors? So we alluded to spacecraft and valve issues being a thing. A Crew Dragon, or is it a Crew Dragon or was it a Cargo Dragon? Literally exploded on the test stand.
It was the Crew Dragon from Demo 1, yeah.
Yeah, a Crew Dragon from Demo 1 exploded on the test stand, like into a fine mist of spacecraft. And that was also having something to do with valves. Like, what's the deal with valves in spacecraft? Seinfeld.
Yeah, so that was an oddly signed. Yeah, you lapsed into Jerry Seinfeld there. No, that is a good point. There are similarities in that you are correct, right? Like this was valves. We have had issues with this before. Little bit of different circumstances in there where on the Boeing side, this is something that was a known potentiality and was planned for, but for some reason it didn't go the way they thought. Humidity was too high. We'll see how that all falls out and whatever in
pans
the final
out.
report.
Yeah.
The SpaceX one was a bit trickier though. A fair comparison. to the valve issue. But the SpaceX one was a bit more tricky in that nobody in the industry, like from what NASA said, from what SpaceX said, sort of knew that that type of a reaction was possible with what they were doing. It was something that was new to them and unexpected to both SpaceX and to NASA as
Right.
well. And because I very clearly remember briefings where Kathy Leaders was talking about like, yeah, no, this one took us by surprise as well. But the question is very valid in terms of, the explosion. And if I'm being quite frank, I'd rather have the valve issue that Boeing is having than the valve issue that SpaceX had, but corrected. But corrected, like the Dragons that fly now do not suffer from that same issue. But yes, both very grateful that we caught both of those, especially the Dragon one, well before our crew stepped inside of them.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have the Boeing valve issue, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, you've got the SpaceX charisma too. So there's the perception or reality that SpaceX is faster and more agile and not as expensive and all these things. And so SpaceX sort of is more resilient to failures like that. Whereas a larger old space company like Boeing, they have a problem that may not be as bad as your entire spacecraft exploding on the pad, but they take a lot of flack for it because they're old space. You know what I mean? Like they're sort of framed differently.
I do, because I think part of the perception here, like you said, Das, is like it's been a year and a half since OFT1. And yes, there was a bit of an Atlas manifest pile up earlier this year because Starliner was actually ready in March, but the ISS and Atlas weren't ready for it. So it kind of had to wait to July before it had a ride and a space to park. But I'll also point out that SpaceX went from that Dragon capsule exploding in April of 2019 to not only having the system redesigned and recertifying, but flying and being used actively to pull Dragon away from a Falcon 9 in January of the following year. That is just an incredible recovery period from
like turnaround time.
What if that was a NASA capsule would have grounded that program for 2.5 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, we could sit here and talk about this forever. Of course, somebody asks, didn't the 4 towers protect it? And apparently the 4 towers are for lightning, not for humidity and valves.
Yes.
Not going to help with that. How about it just really quickly? We've already spent 30 minutes on this. We have lots of other stuff, including Starship, to talk about. So what are we looking at? Do we have any sort of estimate? Rolling the spacecraft all the way back to the VIF, that was one thing. Demounting, like unstacking the spacecraft. What do we think we're looking at a turnaround time? Like a month, 2 months?
Oh,
the manifest?
no.
We talked about this already.
December, November at the outright earliest, if the U.S. Space Force agrees to relinquish one of their missions that are on the Atlas V manifest at this point. If the U.S. Air Force does not relinquish that or agree to move, 2021. This is one of those unfortunate situations where, like Starliner was actually ready in March and had to wait until July, it might be physically ready to try again before there is literally room for it on either the Atlas manifest or the station's visiting vehicle manifest.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a juggle.
I was talking about, like, it is a traffic jam, and when you lose your space in line, it's like I stayed there overnight trying to get the new PS12 or whatever they're on these days, and if you step out of line, you lost your spot. Guess what? You got to get back in line.
Well, honestly, this is part of the we need a fourth international docking adapter. We need IDA4 up there to be the third one. Because as it stands right now, if there's always a crew Dragon, and whenever there's a cargo Dragon, you have no other port.
Yep. All right. Again, y'all, we could talk about this forever. I tried to sneak a couple questions. A lot of the questions that were coming through, we had actually already talked about. So I saw some relevant questions that we already sort of discussed. But something, it's one of those things, like the comment that I will make is, remember the people that work behind the scenes on things like this, the engineers and the crews that work their lives to make these things work. And just at the end of the day, I know people love to have their favorite punching bags and, old space, et cetera, and try to keep in your mind separate the folks who put their blood, sweat, and tears into projects like this, and then the big company that you sort of like to bag on. You know what I mean? Just remember that there are people there trying to make these things work and taking responsibility. Like, well, the right thing to do is not to launch this thing. It's to roll it back and fix this problem the right way. Even though it's not going to be great press for us, it's still the right decision to make. So just remember that there are people behind the scenes that work on these projects, and try to separate those people and the hard work that they do from your thoughts about the big company or whatever. I hope that's a fair thing to say, you know. Moving
it
along.
100% is, yeah.
Yeah, Chris, I want to toss that in there.
It's a lot of companies. It was like you have the people who are working their dream jobs, and then you have management, and management is often doing something very different.
Yeah. Management, politics, all the other different moving parts. Just remember, at the end of the day, there's an engineer there who worked on those valves, on those systems, that sort of stuff, right? Let me do this real quick. Musical Wolves, thank you so much for the support. Moldy Space Industries came through as well, said, this is my favorite live stream that does not exist. We appreciate you, Moldy Space. Thank you.
Is it time to talk about that?
Not yet. We're almost
We have
there.
one more thing before that, actually.
Like the back 3/4, well, anyways, the back half of the show is going to be all about stuff like that. Let's see here. I don't understand. Does Starliner have an issue aligning Starlinks? I think that's a Starliner joke. Thank you, Musical Wolves, for paying to put your joke on the screen. There is some, Thomas, we'll be talking about that in a bit. We know the news out of Roscosmos. I'm going to mention that very briefly in just a minute here. I'm going to hold that for now. Perseverance digging a hole, but no sample. There's another thing, Chris. We'll have to touch on that really quickly. Yeah, I'm just running through here. Calmly Chilled asks, how many chances does Boeing get before NASA gives up on them? Just for the record, I'd love to see Boeing succeed. Chris, we're nowhere near the throw your hands up in the air and abandon Starliner, right?
No, I don't really have an answer for like what would have to happen for that to become a reality, because nobody wants that to be a reality. Nobody wants Dragon to be the only human transportation system that the U.S. has.
Does NASA even get to make that call?
Technically, they could, because they're technically purchasing the service from them. I mean, there's also a moment of like we're way too far into it at this point. Right.
Yeah.
For it to be canceled, but more so it's that redundancy. Because for as much as we've talked about the teething problems, the birthing problems, and they are serious problems that Starliner has had, if Dragon ever had a problem, if Falcon 9 ever had a major problem, and we needed Starliner to be there to pick up that slack, you know, and that effort, no one would be complaining that it existed.
Right. We need options for access to space, and I think that right now the fair thing to say is Starliner is the next closest one to being ready. Dragon's already flying, U.S. astronauts, U.S. rockets, U.S. soil, yada yada yada. We miss you, Jim. But then Starliner is sort of our second place. It's the one that's closest here, so we're not going to just throw it away and say, well, we'll just use Dragon and Starship. That's all we need. Like. We need to keep sort of moving forward. I know we're going to continue talking about this forever, but Calmly Chill, thank you so much for that. Tariq as well, I see your comment there on QA phase. If the issue is documented as risk, you know how the risk can manifest and you mitigate for tests. You can't blame the weather. When you start to get things that are out of family, like beyond what you mitigated for, that's sort of where we are here, right, Chris? Like it was just something they identified, but the actual reality there on the pad was more than they had accounted for. So do you have to change your limits, et cetera, et cetera? This isn't them just throwing up their hands and saying, well, geez, tsunami hit, can't help it, not Starliner's fault. That's not what they're doing.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like I would sort of say it like this, right? You build for the cases that you expect to experience. There's always going to be the out of family thing, right? It's like in the 1960s, they built all the buildings at the Kennedy, and even into the 90s, they built all the buildings at the Kennedy Space Center to withstand a Category 3 hurricane. Well, now if you're building a new structure at the Cape or Kennedy, it has to withstand a Category 5. Does that mean you look at the company that adhered to building codes in the 1960s and go, how dare they?
Yeah.
No. Like they built for the conditions that were expected in the day. Things change, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, Chris, really quick, I don't want to miss this one. John Milene, thank you so much for the support. And Andrew Renna, could you hit this one real quick, Chris? What's the difference between IDA and the berthing port? We were talking about, it's like a limited number of parking spaces at the ISS, and we have to base our spacecraft visiting based on the number of parking spaces available, right?
Yeah, so so there's a really quick answer to this. So the docking adapters are the places that the Crew Dragon and the Cargo Dragons dock to on the International Space Station, where there's no Canadarm that reaches out and grabs them. They just come right on in and ka-chunk right on to the docking port. Whereas berthing ports, like we saw earlier, great segue, like we saw earlier this week with the NG-16 Cygnus cargo mission, it gets about 10 meters away from the International Space Station, holds its position relative to the station, and then Canadarm2 reaches out and grabs it and maneuvers it onto and slowly connects it into one of the berthing ports. The hatches on the berthing ports are also bigger than they are on the docking ports, so there is a benefit if you're transferring like large science racks to and from like Cygnus and the Japan HTV vehicle. There are reasons why you would want a berthing port rather than a docking port. So there's a reason Cygnus has that and HTV has that. It's not just that they didn't want to have a system that could dock. Bigger hatches, bigger things you can bring through.
Gotcha. And then lastly here, then we're going to go on to the next thing here. John Mound gave a shot at your name. Hope I got close to it. Said, yep, what Das said. Of course, I'm going to pick that one. Yep, what Das said. The people that do the work deserve respect. And it is such a huge deal for me. Like, we all get so excited on launch day, and it's successful, it fails. But for years and years beforehand, hundreds, thousands of people working on the project, and then it launches, yay, we're all happy, or it doesn't launch, oh, boo. And then for after that, years and years of the system's lifetime continuing. Like, always remember the people that make these things happen, regardless of what company they work for. I really, that's something that sort of hits me right here, you know. Speaking of,
it's a hard line to toe, really, is knowing where and when to level criticism and how to do so in a way that's not disrespectful to the people on board. But sometimes when you're talking about certain systems and certain efficiencies, you're going to criticize that work regardless.
Right.
Yep. It makes sense. It's just something to always keep in the back of your mind, that there are human beings behind all this. The rockets don't build themselves yet. So moving along, we were talking about launch day and happy things and stuff like that.
Yes, we were.
Let's talk about.
Das is a robot.
Das was a robot, yes.
I knew it. I always knew it. It's fine.
I am getting hit by thunderstorms right now. Do y'all still have me?
Now we do. Yeah, you paused for a second there. You're back.
Yeah.
Nope. He's gone.
Oh, he's gone again. Yep, he is.
Yeah.
But we're still here.
That's true.
So, chat, can you just confirm that you can still hear me real quick? Give me a quick 5x5 in chat if you can still hear me. Open for a 5x5, and I'm seeing, well, I saw one 5x5. There's two. Okay, I think.
Also, just for a moment as well, I've been seeing what you've been saying, chat, about the volume equalization between the different microphones. I've adjusted mine down a little bit, so you let me know if that situation is getting improved at all.
Cool. And since you all can still hear Matt and I know Das was under severe weather warnings and everything up there where he is, so he'll join us when he can. But Matt, you and I can keep talking. We might have a weird infographic hanging, but Das is there. But the other thing we're going to talk about, Das is saying 1 more second. There we go.
Okay.
And
no,
yeah,
y'all go. If you can.
Oh, he's saying go. Oh, okay. It looked like 1 more second. Sorry. Okay, but yes, for happier things, we had the cargo launch of the Antares and the Cygnus resupply vehicle up to the International Space Station. We were just talking about how Cygnus berths instead of docking, but yeah, Thomas Burghardt rolled out to the Wallops flight facility there in Virginia for us and got this pretty epic view of a launch, which included and Matt, I don't know if you were. I don't know if you were watching this one, but this one had a really cool, like, they were working some helium valve issues. They had to push to the very end of the window, so like they were literally at the final second they could lift off.
That's so satisfying.
6 minutes. It was, especially since like 6 minutes before liftoff, one of their backup flight computers went down, and it takes 4 minutes to reboot it. And they were literally just counting down, going like, will it reboot in time? Will it reboot in time?
The drama.
It was. It was honestly one of the most impressive last-minute hiccups where they still managed to get off the ground, with a literal ticking clock. But was really cool, and it was a successful launch. They got the Cygnus into orbit. 3,723 kilograms of crew supplies and experiments and everything on packed inside of that vehicle as it went on up, and it was yeah, I don't know where are you in a part of the country, Matt, where you can like see rocket launches, or are they fairly far away
No,
from you?
no. I mean, I'm in Dallas, so I
Ah,
could drive down to Boca Chica, but that's nothing where I am right now.
Not too
gotcha.
far from McGregor. Am I back? I think I'm back.
You might be back. I
Okay.
can hear you.
Can y'all hear
Yes,
me?
you're
You can
back.
hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Chat, can y'all hear
Yeah.
me? Let me know. I got severe storms hitting here, and it's like thundering like crazy outside and pouring down, it looks like. So my internet hiccuped, but I think that I'm back. And the problem is, of
Yeah.
course, I'm controlling everything.
Sorry,
So
we had to get a different
anyway.
DOS bot out of storage.
Yes.
Boot up another DOS bot here. I think we should be good now. We're getting the preview through and everything. So
Definitely see that.
anyways.
But yeah, no, we weren't kidding when we said like all three of us in different locations are getting slammed by weather right
Yep.
now. So yeah, it's a fun episode for us. But anyway, yes, Cygnus and Antares were not affected by the weather, and this was not Thomas's shot, although Thomas would love a camera that gave us that shot, and so would
That shot,
DOS.
yeah.
Yeah.
This was back to now it's coming up Thomas's shot, I think.
Yeah, but it took about 36 hours to get up to the International Space Station, get grappled by Canadarm2, and then attached to the ISS. And Cygnus will stay there for about 3 months before departing. No CubeSats will be launched after this one, although it is delivering CubeSats that will be launched from the Japanese airlock, from the Japanese module as well. But yeah, that berthing was picture perfect. And there was actually a really cool thing. I forgot to queue it up for us today, but some of the robo controllers from the Canadian Space Agency highlighted a tweet that someone got when they were looking at some of the exterior cameras on the ISS, and they saw Canadarm2 just like pretending to reach out and grab things, and they took a screen and they got video of it, and they said, "What is it doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're practicing grabbing Cygnus." Like that's what
No
we're so
kidding.
even the robot arms go through their practice rehearsals before the vehicles arrive
awesome.
and everything. But that was really cool.
Well, the arm took that the debris hit a while ago and had that little bit
Yeah.
of damage to it. So maybe they were running through some systems because if I'm not mistaken, is this the first time that the arm has been used since that damage?
It's the first time it's grabbed a vehicle since it took that
Grabbed a
hit,
vehicle.
but not the first time that it's been used. This is actually something that we're that is is one of those things that was like, oh wow, the arm is actually used that much. The arm is actually used like 6 out of 7 days out of the week.
No kidding.
Really?
Either through like just hands off, like the astronauts aren't using it, but like the ground is either commanding it to move around to different places to go grab things or move things around. Sometimes it puts Dexter, the little anthropomorphic looking robot with hands and feet.
Yep, the multi-tool looking thing, right?
Yeah, the special purpose dexterous manipulator is actually what it is the formal name. And it can do like removal and replacement tasks and maintenance upgrades on the outside of the station too, without humans. But they also are testing a lot of artificial intelligence and AI and training the arms and the camera systems. Like, okay, that's a shadow. Like, understand that that's a shadow and not a thing you need to avoid. And yeah, but the arm is actually used extensively throughout the week on the station. Yeah.
Gotcha. So the DOS had a valve issue. Thank you. Yes, DOS had a valve issue. I'm grabbing some questions here.
What, you can't handle a little rain, DOS?
Yeah, little rain comes through and all my valves just freeze up. It's starting to get old, I think. Let's see here. Let's grab a couple questions here and talk through some of these. Do we know what OS was the rebooted computer running? So talking about the rebooted computer there for the Antares launch, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it was a backup computer, I heard.
It was a backup computer, yes.
On the net.
Yes, but flight rules usually mandate that all of your computers are up and running when you leave the ground, so that if you lose one, you still have redundancy when you leave the ground. Yes.
So not like oh, well, here we go. I guess the computer's still down, but we don't need it to proceed anyways, like a backup computer, a critical system or something like that. Unlikely they would have proceeded with the launch if that hadn't come back up, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Because if you lost the primary after liftoff, your backup's down.
Yep, but don't know what OS specifically was running. Probably like Windows 95 or something. I don't know.
Windows ME.
Reach out. Yeah, Windows ME.
Windows
Windows ME. If anybody wants to tell us, like if you're on the team and you want to tell us what OS it runs, let us know. But good question there,
I can take a
Lionel.
shot at asking him next time on
Yeah, why
NG-17.
not?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Musical Wolves asked, do we know why the computer rebooted at T-6? I don't think we got any of those, that detail. Those details.
They never said, but a fairly standard thing that we do, or that I do every Cygnus mission, is we talk to the Cygnus and the Antares leads, and we ask them about the previous mission to overview hiccups and things like that. So when we get to NG-17, we'll have an answer. Maybe before then too, but at the very least, when we get to NG-17, we'll have that answer for you. Yeah.
And while we talk through the questions, I'm going to put one more video up on the screen.
Yeah.
Whoa, too much. One more video up on the screen here, because this is from Thomas, and we'll just let this tweet roll in the background while we answer one or two more questions. Yeah.
This is a
he
good
said
video,
watch till the end. Yeah. Not so much a question here from Jesme 2006, but they answered, must have been Linux, because you can't open Windows in space.
I appreciate you. Just
like
want you
that.
to know that I approve.
Yes.
From that one. Just moving right along from there. We appreciate you.
Right along.
Oh, geez. Space Explorer said, my dad is ATC and the radar consoles still run Win95, apparently. Huh. Interesting. Everybody joking about the type of Windows.
Oh my gosh. Just imagine when the government has to certify Vista.
Oh my gosh. You saw on the back end of this here, actually a deer ran across, because like many of the launch sites, a nature preserve out there at Wallops Island, and I don't know if I'll be able to pause it just right, but there's a deer that runs off into the cane right up there. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. Trust me, there's a deer in there, y'all. There is. Anyways. So moving right along, let me get us into another topic here. Super chats keep on coming in. More questions about what OS it was running. Lionel, I think we got you there. We don't know, but we'll try to ask. Thank you for the support there. John Klein, thanks for the $5. Appreciate you as well. And let's see, we've got a couple more, but there are other things that we're talking about, so we'll hold those until we get there.
I think I can answer one really quickly, Das, actually, because there was a perseverance question earlier.
Yes.
That doesn't really fit with anything that we're talking about later, but I can hit this really quick. Yeah. So perseverance went to collect its first sample using the drill arm and everything that it's got there. And when they analyzed what was in the collection tube, there was nothing in the collection tube. And that was kind of a head scratcher, because everything worked. Like, that was one of the weird things when they started looking. Like, this was funny, Matt. Like, I mean, because you would automatically think, right, the arm malfunctioned, the drill malfunctioned, the little slide that gets it in there malfunctioned, and they were looking at all the data going like, nope, that all worked perfectly. The leading theory is basically that it's the ground, it's the rock that it drilled into, was not the rock they were expecting, and yeah, didn't put this into the sample collection tube. And that's actually very good news, because if there's nothing physically wrong with the process that they can figure out, it's probably just something they need to figure out with the type of rock that it drilled into. And how that particular, and what exactly happened. But if there's nothing mechanically wrong with the system, we should still be able to get some samples and some samples collected.
I'm so invested.
Oh my gosh. I just love the idea, like, because we don't anthropomorphize these things enough, of like, Percy rolling around going like, a little sample for you, a little sample for you,
It's exactly what I was going for. Is just they've like all the tweets from this account are like, I drilled a rock today, and I'm like, I love you, little buddy. You can do it. It's okay. You'll get a core next time. I just want them to keep doing it.
I know whoever at Public Affairs had the thought, because Curiosity does this too, like of making it first person, making their Twitter accounts. Brilliant, just brilliant.
And I brought up the picture real quick. You can see, I think they found the sample, but it created like a little miniature volcano cone around the hole. Like the sample was just so loose and dry when they did the core, they pulled the sampler back up and it just fell out, basically.
Yeah, because like they make the point in this tweet about, which is only a couple days old, which is good, about like how it wasn't quite like the rocks that they had practiced on here on Earth and things like that. And that, but that's one of those things. Like you get there and ours is different. It's a hunk of rock, but it's different, right? And this is one of those cool things. Like, honestly, they're going to learn so much from the fact that it didn't get into the sample container that, like, this is pretty cool no matter what.
Yep. It's one of those things like it's not a failure because you're going to learn something from it, right? And NASA will learn something from it. JPL knows what they're doing when it comes to driving around RC cars on Mars. I hope I can say that. I hope somebody
companion helicopters along with it to take its photograph.
I hope nobody at JPL is like, really driving RC cars on Mars. I hope they chuckle when they hear that and they don't like facepalm when they hear that. But that was a great question. Thanks, Chris, for grabbing that one real quick. Do we want? Oh, geez, Chris.
Let's start with infographic 1.
Okay.
We'll end the next segment with the tweet. But Matt, I'm really interested in your view on this. And before we show it, I'm going to preface this by a reminder of what Das you said earlier. What we say here is about the PR comms team, and what Blue Origin is choosing to have be their public face. We do not say anything about the employees who are working very, very hard to make New Glenn and the BE4 a reality.
Yeah.
That said, we cannot ignore what the communications team is pushing out.
Chris, I think we could say, that said, what the heck? Like, really?
Yeah, this is actually where, like, Matt, I'm very curious on your thoughts on this, because I know
I would like you guys to go first, and I will I will fill in the gaps after that.
There's like a 10-foot pole involved here, right? Like,
it's more so than anything with this one and the next one, I'm just disappointed. I mean, that's literally more than anything. Like, that's just.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I mean, because like, here's the thing. Like, will it take a larger number of starships to refuel the tanker, right, to make this sort of mission possible? Will it take a few flights? Yes, it will. Does SpaceX know the number yet? Back when they submitted the bid, it was 16. Starship's design continues to change. Elon talked about that a little bit, saying it could be 8, it could be 4. You might not need the full propellant load to be right. Like, there's all this stuff they have to figure out, and also what the final mast or blah 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 blah. We'll talk about all about that in the Starship section. Is it complex and risky to do fuel transfers on orbit as part of your mission architecture? Sure, doing anything in space is risky. And I don't say this to be snarky. I say this as a firm reality. When Blue Origin has a system that gets selected too, it will be complex and it will have risk. And it will involve multiple launches, and it will involve technology that has not been used before and has been developed specifically for this. The reason I'm sad and disappointed with this is because you could make an infographic like that attacking any single rocket and any single program in history. You could have made that infographic about the Saturn V program.
Somebody did. Like,
well, somebody did. Somebody made a meme out of it. Yes, but
send 2 astronauts to the moon within the next decade. Like, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Like, what the heck?
Like,
this is a crazy idea.
This one was like the head scratcher and the like. All right, well, I wouldn't have done that, and I don't really agree with the PR move on this one. But they made it worse.
I got that one too.
They made it worse.
Yeah. It's straight from them, I think. Does that one fit?
And
there you
this
go.
was this was another one of those bizarre, like, okay. I'm also not. I mean, I am just also not sure, like, because you see that the banner plastered at the bottom. NASA needs competition that isn't immensely complex and high risk. I have one honest to God question, and it's a true question. Show me the rocket and the engines that it uses that the National Team Lander system will be launched on.
There you go.
Yep.
A very eloquent way of saying, where are my engines, right? Where's
I'll
my
be
rocket?
I'll be less eloquent. This is trash. Do better.
Do better. There you go.
Honestly, you could have made an infographic about anything to do with your own program during your own presentation. They decided to make 2 giant infographics about somebody else's program and complaining about it. That's not going to win over the hearts of NASA or anybody who chooses the program. It's not going to win over anybody who's looking at the programs from the fan perspective. It's just sort of bellyaching at this point. Like, why? You don't need it. It's not entirely accurate either. Launched from a spaceport that doesn't exist. That's shocking to me.
And
I've been living in a hallucinogen world.
yeah.
I think, like, I'll jump in. The graphics aren't wrong. The graphics state facts. The graphics release things that are right there from SpaceX's own proposals. But it's one of those things where you've seen people that do this sort of thing, like, well, technically you're at the party or whatever, and somebody's like, well, actually, that's not true. And coming in with a well, actually, and saying, like, well, here's all this stuff. It's all accurate stuff. Like, the way you say it, I don't care if you're saying something, it's good that it's true, but the way that you say it reflects on you and your mentality and the way that you're coming about things. And are you part of the team or are you not? And how do you interact with everybody else who's got interest in this, right? And it doesn't matter if you're right or not. The way you said it was not really great. Like,
Because
not the way you want to interact with people.
because this has now become they have made this the conversation instead of, why couldn't we have just gotten 2 infographics highlighting what your system is proposed to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's misdirection. Look over there and not at what we don't have.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, to paraphrase the Big Lebowski, you're not wrong. You're just a jerk.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're just a jerk. That,
Yeah.
something? That's exactly sort of what I was going for there. I mean, the infographics are factual, but you're being a jerk. Like, come on. And you know something? The first thing that I thought, I had a tweet about this when the first immensely complex and high risk thing came out. My thought was, you know something? We need to go to space and do things that are immensely complex and high risk. If we're going to start working in living in space and we're going to have more space stations and we're going to have a base on the moon and all of this expansion into cislunar space and then on to Mars, we've got to put the ball in the air. We've got to take a swing at it, and we need to do things that are immensely complex and high risk by definition. Like, this is almost an advertisement for what SpaceX is doing, if you look at it a certain way. You know what I mean?
In an odd way. I mean, I did see something, and my apologies. I saw this somewhere. I do not remember who said it, but it was something along the lines of, by the time Starship makes it to orbit, Blue Origin will have done more promotion for it than SpaceX. You know,
it's reminiscent a little bit about what Blue Origin was putting out during the whole Virgin rocket launch and everything else.
Yeah,
And they're like, well, they're not going above a certain particular interpretation of the Kármán line, so they're not really going to space, and it doesn't count. And like,
come on,
why are you here?
Right,
Launch a rocket then.
Exactly, like they're arguing over definitions when it's like, you know what? I want to see a New Glenn roll out of that factory. I want to see a Vulcan with BE4 engines. I want to see that type of development, right? Like this shift over to the Methalox side, right? That companies really seem to be embracing here on the US market is good. Like, I really want to see that. I want that competition. I want New Glenn, you know, what they were saying as like a fully reusable vehicle with a stainless steel second stage now. Like, yes, I make it, you know, make a rocket with a 7 diameter meter fairing. Make a rocket, and Starships is 9. Great. the more bigger things we can throw up there and expand and do is great. So
It really is. So
make that the reality. Make us cheer for you. Make us when we see that New Glenn lift off and we hear all your employees cheering. Make that the story, please.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if somebody on the comms team was like, no such thing as bad PR, and decided to toss these things out, because they've certainly made it the conversation, like all over the place, right? Like we're talking about it right now. Even I really hope that that wasn't the thought process, the neurons that were firing that caused these graphics to be created, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
either way,
I don't think it'll happen this way. I think they will definitely be the second provider that gets chosen. And I know we're going to segue to Starship now because there's something cool happening that we're going to show you in a second.
There is. So again, y'all, let me see if there's a couple comments or questions or something like this. On this, we are going to move on. Leave the last 30 minutes of the show here for Starship and Starship activities. But let me see. I'm just trying to see if there's any actual questions. There's certainly a lot of comments. Like there's a lot of passion around this. There's a lot of people making statements. And again, I imagine that there are people that work at the company that are like, oh my gosh, really? Like, come on, Dad. Really? You're gonna show up to the party and that's what you're gonna tell all my friends? But I'm just looking through here. I don't actually see any questions. Apollo was immensely complex and high risk. Look at how that went. Nick, exactly right. I actually don't see any questions.
The space station is immensely complex and high risk. Like that's it. Like everything we have done, every venture that we have has been complex and high risk, but we got there and we've succeeded in doing those things because we didn't let complex and high risk stop us.
Yep. You're not going to get into space easy and safe. Like nobody's ever said going to space is easy and safe. Like no matter how you do it, right? Anyways, I see a lot of comments like the target of the infographic isn't NASA, it's Congress. Sure, but guess what? It's on Twitter. We're gonna see it too. It doesn't work that way.
I don't think the infographics gonna move Congress either at this point.
I mean, no, Congress got upset that only one was selected and vowed to give 10 billion more, but I mean that's already being eviscerated as it works its way through the bill making process and the appropriations making process. I mean, it's not 10 million anymore.
Yep. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, these things don't. I mean, like public perception, public facing things don't have a large view in like who gets contracts or not. But I'd also be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that after seeing all this wouldn't be upset if NASA chose Dynetics as the second lander.
Yeah. I came into it as a big fan.
Yeah.
Like I wanted multiple systems, and I was personally disappointed when they only awarded one, because I think it's good to have competition and I don't want all our eggs to be in one basket, all this stuff, right? But then even as somebody who is a big fan of having two systems, then this comes out and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I feel bad about it. Like, come on. Like I want competition, I want options, but I don't want this.
Right. And like I don't think we wanted the GAO like protests that happened, but also, you know, in some ways, kudos to NASA for saying, you know what, we wanted two systems as well. You didn't give us enough money for that.
Fund it. Yeah.
So we're not going to underfund two programs and have this drag out for a decade. We're going to fund one with the money that you gave us, and we're going to fund it in full. And if you want to, give us more. You know,
to be fair, if it was, you know, just SpaceX has backups in multiple copies probably any time of any of their rockets. If they wanted to, it'd be really easy for them. If something goes wrong, they've got a whole bunch more in the stable they can just bring out. I don't know that you could say the same about any of the other possible providers.
No, that is true, and I think that's one of the benefits. I mean, NASA was sort of vague in what they called the benefits of HLS, but I mean, I know both Kathy leaders really hit and really hammered the point of like what the amount that they were getting for the price was just mind-blowing. I mean, where you have this immensely roomy vehicle for the crews to move around and live in, you have this really high level cargo delivery capacity to the lunar surface, and it's so cheap. And sort of, Matt, to your point too, all they got to do is bend the steel. It's what it seems like. It's immensely more complicated than that. But I
Yeah.
mean, like, I mean, it really does just seem like you're exactly right, Matt. I mean, you turn around and you blink, and it's like, oh, there's the next one. Okay,
Yeah.
and Elon's saying, well, I don't know, it's a lawn ornament because we ran out of room to store it.
So let me do this right here. Of course, a ton of memes came out of this, right? From where's my engines to the spaceport that doesn't exist. Thomas actually had a great tweet the other morning saying, "Good morning from the spaceport that does not exist." With the skyline there out at Boca Chica. Of course, is an operational space point? Is the GSE done yet? Has it launched anything to orbit? Whatever. It's in work. Like they're working on it right now. But
I don't see anything.
It's launched more things than Pad 36 at the Cape.
It's accurate. Like I'm glancing here and I'm like, I don't know. Matt, do you see anything? I don't see anything in the
no,
shot.
I don't. Is it a picture of John Cena? I don't understand.
What? So a ton of memes and stuff like that came out of that. And in true NASA spaceflight fashion, we had to embrace the memes, and we have created our own sorry. Spaceport Not Found t-shirt. We've got the little Hoppy graphic there, and Hoppy is quite sad, frowning that people think that Hoppy doesn't exist, and it actually says 404 Spaceport Not Found. So the guy at the store told me that this is now live in the store, and if you want to confuse your friends, I see he also put the logo down on
Can we
the
zoom in on
shoulder.
that graphic?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's the sad
Chat.
hopper that makes it for me.
Chat, are you really gonna let Hoppy frown like that and stay frowny? Are you really gonna let this be the way of the world?
Look how sad Hoppy looks. Like, I feel like we need to play like Arms of an Angel or something here. So, anyways, this is in store right now. Don't want to spend too much time, but look at poor Hopper.
We have to
you can
protect Hoppy at all
support Hopper.
costs.
Yeah, there you go. There is a link to that if you want to grab one of those t-shirts. Again, things like the Merc Shore and stuff, we don't try to shove it down your throat or anything like that, but it is a great way to support the show and the 404 Spaceport Not Found, relevant to the way that things are going on this week. That brings us to our last set of topics, though. What were they again?
Well, I think
Starship.
I think it's something big and shiny with tiles and
Oh, jeez.
they played musical chairs this week.
Musical chairs, nice. Everybody's favorite news from the spaceport that does not exist. Boca Chica, Texas, down there. It's Starbase. Here is a tweet from Mary to kick it off. Chris, what's going on out there?
I think Matt, I have a question for you actually on this front, but don't panic, because I always because we always say blink and you miss it. You went on vacation for a little while.
I did.
Did you even remotely recognize it when you got back?
Not really. There was a lot more going on. I was gone for 2 weeks, and it's scary. It's like a weeping angel from Doctor Who. You just sort of look away, and now it's like it's a lot more in frame.
Weeping angel.
I appreciate that reference so much.
You're welcome.
Love it. Yeah, it was a bit. I mean, man, we thought. I mean, the previous week had been busy when they rolled them all out and stacked them all, and it was just like you didn't feel like you could catch your breath. It was such a breakneck pace. I mean, and then the ship came back, and the ship got tile work, and then the booster was destacked, and then the booster came back, and then a cryo shell went out. There was a conga line at one point going out to the pad as well. Like,
what did I miss?
Oh, you missed when Starship. So when Ship 20 went back out, was that only yesterday, Doss? It was.
I think it was. Yeah, I can't even keep track of what happened on what days anymore at Starbase.
I know. When Ship 20 went back out, after it came back and had its Technicolor tile coat put on, that's what we're calling it now.
It's true.
It had like a conga line of we called them TPS attendants following them, but there was just a conga line of lifts, of like boom lifts following it out to the launch pad. It was really funny to watch the other day.
I think I'm gonna see if I can find that real quick.
Yeah. I know we got some time lapse of it too. But yeah, it's been an intense week. The booster is back undergoing work. The ship is now back out at the launch site undergoing some form of testing. some kind of cryo and pressurization testing is what it will be undergoing. I mean, and oh my gosh, yeah. And I know, Das, we thought the ship was going to a pad, but then it turned out that the cryo test area was something totally different and wasn't Pad B. So Pad B's name remains, and the cryo test area was in fact something different. Everyone has to wave to Hopper as they go by.
I set up that shot. We hadn't done the shot before, but this is actually Booster 4 returning back
Yes.
from the pad. But we heard over the announcement, so Thomas and Mary were out there, and they heard an announcement saying that Ship 20 was going back to the cryo test area. I think it was cryo test area was the specific terminology that was used. And we said, oh, the cryo test area, they must have renamed Pad B because Pad B had the hydraulic rams that put force on the bottom of the thrust puck, I guess, whenever they're doing cryo testing. And we'd seen them do cryo tests there before, and we thought, oh, well, they're calling Pad B, suborbital Pad B, the cryo
We need to
test pad.
reboot DOS
and
again.
as it turns out, instead, Ship 20 rolled all the way back near the orbital pad. Now, is there where? Yep. Am I dying again? I'm dying again.
Oh no! Well, you're back. You're back.
Yep, my internet is dying again. Y'all just talk about what's going on here.
I will say that whole shot was framed perfectly. It was beautiful. It was cinematic.
It really was. Now I know there are probably a slew of questions about this and about Starship as well. I like Musical Wolves. Is S20 the ship with the most walking distance? Yeah, well, I mean, I think so, right? Because it came back, went again.
Yeah.
So maybe. Could be. Might have that there. But yeah, what was curious too is like we did see because we talked to Matt about the Technicolor TPS coat that it had on it. Which was interesting because when they rolled it out the first time, right, they had some tiles that were falling off as it was rolling out to the pad and everything, and there was some questions about, like, oh my gosh, how are the tiles going to survive if they're a launch, if they're falling off on their way to the launch pad, and some of them were a little rushed in how they were put on, might we say. Some of them were already damaged, we knew from the application process, but what's really cool is it appears that that marking is basically them going like, yeah, we need to touch this up. No, it's good. Maybe we want to watch this after it's back out at the pad, hard red, pull and replace, type thing. But, it is interesting watching them learn from even small things like that on the thermal protection system.
I just love how fast they just adapt to things. And they just always seem to, like, something happens they don't expect. They're just like, huh, that's neat. Okay. All right, let's keep going. And just roll with it every time. And I feel like other companies, if something like that happened, they would panic and freeze and go, all right, we need to stop what we're doing right now, and we need to push this by 5 months because that scared me. Maybe that's
when the tile fell off, or like when the other,
just anyway. I just love how fast that they just adapt to anything that they're doing. Just like incorporate it, make a new process.
I mean, it is in a way like it makes these shows fun and dynamic because a lot of times we learn things live on air with everyone else, which is really fun. But like I was thinking back to the videos that Tim did, and Tim Dodd was on last week, talking about the parts that he had released of that interview that he did with Elon, the walk and talk through the facility. And I mean, like, one thing that I appreciated about it was how many times that they would be talking and Elon would have to stop and go, so remember, just because it's true now doesn't mean it's true in a week, because it is like there's references now to like the fact that the ships are going to be caught by the arms of the towers as well, and that the moon, that the lunar variants and the Mars variants of the ships are the variants that need legs right now. And he even mentioned until the infrastructure is built on Mars and the moon to catch them with towers. So like they're already thinking like if the catch element of it works, how do we build a catching tower and mechanism on Mars? How do we build catch towers on the moon. Like, and I mean, it's so incredible. Like, I mean, we've talked so much too about the lunar variant of Starship having the hot gas thrusters up at the top of it because you can't be firing the Raptor engines as you're descending toward the lunar surface and toward the lunar regolith. And Elon saying, well, that might not be true because it might just be that the concern you have is that you'll dig yourself a crater and then you topple over in the crater, but maybe we need to do lunar regolith tests and landing tests like that here on Earth to see if we ever really need. I mean, it's like they don't even have design one of the lunar variant, and he's already like thinking of how they iterate it and thinking of how do we make it simpler and make it more effective.
Where would
Like,
they land a regolith test?
Oh, they would basically have to design. They would basically have to custom design one and then throw the ship out either at it or like they would build one there at Boca Chica, like on their landing pad to simulate it, and then either hop it from a suborbital pad or do something, or like if they, I don't know, I'm spitballing here. None of this is things that Elon have said. I'm just spitballing how they could do this. You know, they have those big oil rigs as well. If it was something where they couldn't do it at the production site because they didn't want to risk, they didn't want to risk if it tips over damaging something, build it on an oil platform, haul the oil platform a few miles off the coast and hop your Starship there. There are many different ways that they could do it. Yeah, just sort of greatly expanding what NASA used when they were testing the lunar modules in the 60s. Yeah.
I think I'm back. Am I back?
I think you are. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Oh, look at that shot of the Raptors going by. Oh, the Raptors, the pretty Raptors.
That's from one of the robot cameras out there. That was Michael tracking with some custom software he wrote as those Raptors went by.
I cannot wait to see that light up.
Oh,
it's gonna be nuts, man.
I can't wait to feel that light up.
Yeah, I'm sure wherever you are in the world, you're gonna feel it. Like
you're gonna feel it. Yeah. So that was sort of the big thing. Like I know one of the big things.
Yeah.
Because we've got Starbase Live that's live 24/7, and a lot of the times I'm hanging out in chat over there, talking with people, and so many people coming in, asking when it's going to launch. Like every day, somebody new comes in, and it's really tough to be like, oh my gosh, really? It's not launching. So many people interpreted that rollout to the pad for the ship and the booster and the stacking and everything like, oh, it's going to fly now, right? It's ready to go. And we knew that wasn't really the case. And this is all normal stuff. The shuffling, like you were talking about, Chris, was all normal. Like they're moving things around to continue the work and swapping in and out Raptors and stuff like that. So coming up this week, I think we have a lot of testing, right?
Yeah.
It certainly appears that way from the road closure notices, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think I've got that here. Let me see if that actually comes up for us. All this coming week, we have road closures scheduled, basically August 16th, 18th, 19th, and 20th. We've got an intermittent closure there on the 16th. And intermittent usually means they're just transporting something. You don't usually see an intermittent closure when it's going to be a test, like a cryo test or a static fire or something like that. But then later in the week, they're not intermittent closures. They actually show up as full-on closures there.
And I believe there was an Elon tweet that he wanted the whole system back at the pad by Monday, which would be the 16th, which would explain an intermittent closure if maybe that's the booster going back. But who knows? I mean, who knows?
You're not wrong. I mean, we know that Ship 20 is already out there, and we know that Booster 4 is back in the high bay, but on Monday it may very well roll back out, and we may see a full stack again. But
it very well may, yeah. But yeah, I'm very interested in what those non-intermittent closures are very late, later in the week, because we know there's a whole like system, right, that they go through DOS where it's not like they just roll out and go fuel and light the engines. There's proofing tests and then cryo-proofing tests and then sometimes fueling tests, and then you usually clear those hurdles and get to engine ignition, although the biggest question mark there is how many engines will it have when it goes back to the pad, because that's another big in the air question. Like, I don't know.
we're gonna see. We're gonna see what the deal is. We normally expect the set of tests. So an ambient test. Can your ship hold pressure? Right? They'll pressurize it with nitrogen or something like that just to see if it holds pressure. And then we'll see cryo tests usually. And I'm saying usually because Elon may change this process for these test articles, or these prototypes, I guess. So we usually see a cryo test where they'll actually put cryogenic liquid, the methane and the liquid oxygen, like actual propellants they would use, and we'll see ice form on the outside and all that sort of stuff. And does the ship survive that? We have seen ships not survive that. We know that they haven't done a test like that with a Starship that has all the tiles on it. So
which Elon has said is one thing they
Mhm.
really want to look at, because when you take that steel skin and put cryogenics in it, it shrinks, but it doesn't all shrink. The whole tank doesn't shrink uniformly, right? It shrinks
Yep.
as the propellant level is rising up. So are the tiles gonna bump together and crack? Are they gonna fall off? You know, in those regards. And then he also mentioned, like, you know, when they go to do um, the hot gas pressurization that goes
Mhm.
into it, right? That he talked about them, then they can use that for booster orientation in flight when it's up above the atmosphere. But that also then heats the steel structures, so now the tiles they're going from ambient to cryo to hot to and then they have to and then they
And
have to be
then
slammed into the atmosphere for 1300 degrees centigrade protection around the outside of that vehicle as it comes
Yep.
back in. Yeah.
So we're still expecting to see some tests. We'd even talk about the static fires. Like, are you going to see a full up static fire? If you want to static fire the booster, are you going to put a minimum set of engines on there? Are you going to put all the engines on there, but only static fire 3? Like, how do you even design that test campaign? If you have 29 flight engines, do you risk all 29 of your flight engines with a static fire where only 3 engines are firing? We've seen problems with static fires. Like, do you risk your engines? We'll have to see what they're going to decide.
Because
They're
at a
gonna have to
certain
at
point,
some
I'd
point.
imagine. Go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
At some
No,
point, Matt, you're right. So are they going to get to a point where Elon just says, nope, we're just going to roll the dice, risk it for the biscuit, all 29 engines, we're firing 3, we're firing 9, then we're firing 29. Like, is that going to be the case? Is it going to be more prolonged of a test campaign? I don't know that prolonged test campaign and Elon Musk really go together.
No, but
He
but
just,
but 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 a dual static fire where, like, you do 3 and then you put the rest of the, or you put a subset in and then you put the rest of them in and you fire that subset and then you put more in and then you fire. Like
Yep.
a dual static fire approach would for SpaceX be a prolonged test campaign.
Yep. Are you going to see Booster 4 on Pad A and Starship on Pad B? And are you going to get like static fire, like back and forth, some sort of ping
Ooh,
pong
like a
match?
static fire off, like which
A
did it
static fire
better?
off.
Like
I
Battle
want to
of the
see
Bands
two
style.
battle of the bands, like 2 coordinated static fires, like at the same time, both of them static fire their engines. I don't even know if that's
SpaceX is
possible.
like, well, we weren't quite ready for the Olympics, but we wanted synchronized static firings.
Synchronized static firings.
But
We
but
do
Matt,
expect.
I'm with you on that last one. Like I truly, there is no way, with the way that SpaceX tests and flies, that they would literally want the first time they ignite 29 Raptor engines side by side of each other to be the, hey, release the clamps and let's see what happens. Like,
YOLO,
I
just
don't,
like.
good lord, I don't think they want to do that, because, and Elon made a point of saying this, right? Like, replacing the ground infrastructure is a lot harder than replacing an engine and a booster in a ship.
Yeah.
They're when they set the expectation like this, like, yes, there's always the possibility it could rud on the launch pad, but oh my god, you really, really, really don't want it to rud on the launch pad, because that's the hardest thing for you to replace in your system.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So we're going to see some tests over the course of the week. Good news for us. We like watching tests. We'll stream them. Like, we'll be here sharing them with you for sure. But speaking of things that rapidly change, let me see if I can't pull in a live view from Boca Chica right now, Chris.
Yeah,
And
because we got a little report in our back channel that what we believe from what we are seeing on Starbase Live is that they are cutting Booster 3 in half.
where it is.
where it is on Pad A, people had been asking earlier today. I don't see a booster transport stand, but the crane is attached to it. What are they doing? And we believe they might be cutting booster 3 in half right
This
now.
is
So
this
this
is a
is
live
live,
view.
Das.
Yeah, this
Yes,
is live
which
right
one
now.
which one of your robots is it that has?
This one's Mars Cam, and
Okay.
Chris B has it zoomed all the way in. We saw him earlier this morning at that big Buckner crane, the yellow crane, in a lot of turbulence. It's still hot. You can see the atmosphere here. But that yellow crane is the Buckner crane. Earlier today, we saw them attach the spreader bar up to the top of the booster. And then we thought, okay, they're gonna take the booster off and they're gonna put it on a transport stand and roll it away, whatever. And then there's not a transport stand out there right now. I asked Mary, and I was like, Mary, is there a transport stand ready to put this thing on? And she said, no, there's not anything there. And so now we actually see a lift up around halfway. And the lift has been methodically going all the way around the outside. And we've seen them do this with the nose cone. Remember the cargo nose cone that was out in front of the windbreak? And we saw them attach the lift to it. And then all of a sudden, there was a lift or attached a crane to it, and there were lifts around it, and the lifts went all the way around it, almost like a can opener. And later in the day, pop, the top of that nose cone came off, and they set it on the ground next to it. It looks like
And I remember your reaction in our back channel when that happened. When you're like, they just took the nose off, like they just cut it in half. What?
I was sitting there all day long. I was watching Starbase Live all day, and I was like, okay, all right, we don't want to miss the lift. Task a robot to this. We'll make sure we catch it. And we thought they were going to pick it up and move it somewhere. And they picked it up, sure, but only the top half. And the bottom half just stayed there. They scrapped the thing out.
And when I was covering, because I was covering the views for Starbase Live a little earlier today, and I was noticing the crane activity, that go up, go down, go up, go down, go up, go down. And I just really thought they were getting ready to pick it up off the stand like you all, and wondering when the transport was going to arrive. I never really thought they may have been pre-gaming the slice and dice.
I got a little bit wider shot here as well.
I mean, Matt, but I mean, like you were just saying, like, I mean, like how quickly they adapt, and like, there's a part of me that loves the fact that this might truly be a like, we don't need it anymore. What's the easiest way to get rid of it? Cut it up,
cut it in half. We don't have room at the production site to do it. Let's just do it right here. Like, we do know.
I did see a quick question though, really quick, because I know I've seen this a lot. Ship 3 does not. Sorry, blah 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 blah. Let's try that again. Ship 20 does not currently have any Raptors installed in it. It rolled out Raptorless.
Right.
And I've seen that question a few times, and that was a really easy one to hit. So just wanted to grab that real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see if we can't grab some more. I'll just leave it on the wider shot here. And you can see the two lifts that are up a little bit more than halfway. It's going to be very interesting if later today or tomorrow we don't see the top come off of that thing and they just set it on the ground and cut it up. But let's grab a couple of questions here, because again, this is like our talk show and we talk a lot, as it turns out. So
this CGI is really good, by the way.
I don't know how to do this in CGI. Like I can point a real camera at something and live stream it. I can't do this like CGI.
Well, I mean, the CGI department at NSF thanks you for how real this looks.
Oh yeah, okay. Our computer-generated graphics is me pointing a camera at something in the real world and then using a computer to stream it. Yes, I can do generating computer graphics. Let's see here. There and back again. Nice, Keith. SN15 was there and back again. S20 there, back and there again. It's like a Hobbit show coming up here. We appreciate you, Keith. Let's see. Where is the new cryo testing area? There's a good question from Kevin. Where is the new cryo testing area? They said they were taking Ship 20.
Yeah, as near as we can figure, you're looking at it.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they said they were taking it, and then it just arrived at the orbital launch site and just sort of parked there. And Das, have we seen them hook anything up to it? Have we seen anything like roll toward its position or anything that would? I mean, because what I've got to assume at this point is either the cryo is that something at that farm is up and running, because we know they don't need like cryogenic oxygen and cryogenic methane. We know they can do cryogenic nitrogen for the cryo tests and everything, but or there's a line that no one has seen from the suborbital fueling farm.
I'd check in with Mary because Mary can get right there on the roadside, and I'll need to ask her. As of
Yeah.
earlier today, we hadn't seen them hook anything up to S20. Now, is it on the other side or something that we can't see? Is it some sort of temporary line that they're going to use to do an ambient pressure test? Our understanding is that the big orbital GSE farm is not operational yet, right? I
Right.
don't know that any parts of it are plumbed or holding liquids. In fact, Chris, we haven't seen 500 tanker trucks deliver anything over there yet. So if one
Right,
of those
exactly.
tanks was filled with nitrogen, we would have seen hundreds of trucks filling it with nitrogen. And I don't know that we've seen that yet.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah.
I
Wait, it
we
takes
did
hundreds of trucks to fill it up? I bet somebody
uh
else could do it with only 3.
it's very much a chicken or the egg problem there, Matt. Like, yes, we'll just park a Starship and fill it up with a Starship.
Oh my gosh.
We know that the other smaller tank farm was active, but we don't know that that big tank farm out there is ready to go yet. So what are they testing later this week?
How are they going to test it? I mean, these are some of these are some of the questions that yeah, like I mean, like, but you know, like I kind of want to take hit pause for a second. Like a lot of the way that we know how a lot of this stuff works is because Mary is out there every single day watching it. And that, so like when you said, yeah, no, we need to ask Mary, what she's seen on the ground, like, yeah, no, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I mean, we know there's two sort of areas to the facility, right? I can actually bring that view up, I think. There are two different areas of the facility. There's the suborbital pads, Pad A and Pad B, that has the suborbital tank farm over there. Then there's the larger orbital complex that has the big tower. It's got the orbital launch platform and mountain table and all that sort of stuff. And to our knowledge, I don't know that those two things are plumbed together. Like, is there a super
Yeah.
secret underground line that goes from the suborbital tanks over to the orbital pad so they can do testing? I don't know that that ever happened. Maybe it did, and we just didn't observe it happening. But it makes sense that in the future, if they're going to cryoproof things or do those tests, they would have the ships over closer to the orbital farm. Like, is the
Yeah.
suborbital farm even going to stay? Are they going to use that for anything? I don't know.
It's one of the many one of the many questions here on
Yep.
the evolution of Starbase, which
Yep.
goes much quicker than the evolution of the natural world.
Yeah,
They're very much in like a build it, take it down, move it, whatever they need to do in order to get the right thing at the right place at any
Yeah.
time. I'm very curious as to what this is going to look like in a few years when they actually have a lot more established infrastructure.
Yep. From what I've seen, and I could be wrong, I'm not omniscient or anything. I don't have a eye on top of this tower observing everything that happens at Starbase, but where Ship 20 is parked right now is just sort of a flat concrete staging area. It's sort of where they rolled Booster 4 up when they stacked it. It's where they rolled Ship 20 up, but it's not like this spot has a test stand or structure or anything like that on it. So in the future, we've seen from some of the aerial photos, like if you've seen RGV's aerial photos, some fantastic aerial shots that RGV takes there, but there's a couple pads, like little paddock areas that they're working on in that area. And are those going to be staging areas for picking up the Starship? Are those going to be proofing areas that are plumbed into the tank farm? What are those actually going to be for? I think we're going to see some infrastructure getting built out there, and then we'll be able to make some more educated guesses on that. But yesterday they said that Ship 20, was it yesterday? So much stuff happens. I think it was yesterday. Before Ship 20 rolled out, they said that Ship 20 was going to the cryo test area, the cryogenic test area, and here's where Ship 20 has ended up. So is this the cryogenic testing area? Do they have some plumbing so they can do the testing here? I think this week we're going to see with those road closures,
What we think, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. So let's see here. I know we always go over a little bit. Chris and Matt, do we have a couple minutes to hit a couple more questions here?
Sure. Yeah.
sure,
Do we,
yeah.
do we have to imminently run off or anything? All right.
Nah, no.
Let's see. Mark asked a quick question. Will all the center engines on Super Heavy gimbal together? And if yes, how will it rotate? So do we know roll control on Super Heavy, and can they do that with center engines?
Yeah, the ships, the engines that will be able to gimbal on the booster will be able to provide roll control to the vehicle. So Starship will be able to roll onto course and everything, just like it needs to. Yeah.
And we know that there's probably a couple different control mechanisms on the booster. We know that we've got the engines, the outer ring is fixed, so the Raptor boosts don't gimbal. And then the inner ring of engines are the Raptors that actually can gimbal. And when we say gimbal, we just means the engines can point in different directions, right? Thrust vectoring, they can sort of point the way the fire's coming out, basically, and exert the force in a lever arm, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so we know that the center ones can gimbal, and whether they can all gimbal like in the same direction like synchronized swimmers and do a roll, it seems like that would make sense. We also know that they have some grid fins on it, but I think Elon's statement was that they don't need to use the grid fins for roll control. Did I get that right, or did I say that wrong?
Yeah, no, in fact, they want the grid fins to move as little as possible. Basically just move to maintain their null position with the local airflow around the vehicle, but not have as small an angle of attack as possible to the air. So no, it's going to be the engines that do it, because the engines also have to do the engines also have to impart the pitch, right? Like that fraction of a second before they shut down at MECO. The booster engines that gimbal have to impart that pitch so that when the separation system engages, they're separating like the Starlink satellites are from one another, like that. So they even have to be able. So yeah, pitch and roll control and all, pitch, yaw, and roll, all that. Yep.
Gotcha. And we know there's thrusters, or well, there were hot gas thrusters, and then those are too complicated.
Anymore,
So they went to cold gas thrusters, and then Elon's like, no cold gas thrusters either.
Yep.
Why don't we just vent the tanks? We've got hot gas already. And so I think what we're on now with the booster is literally just opening holes and venting pressure out to get a little bit of an attitude control from those, right?
That is exactly what they're going to do. Yep.
So that's what Elon said last. Now, when we get to launch, they may do something completely different. Like it may be a duck that quacks in a direction, and that's what gives it roll control. But I don't know. We'll see. You never know with Elon.
The quack
more likely
system.
a Shiba.
Yeah, nice. There's a little Doge up there that barks in a direction, and that's what. Anyways, we'll see what they actually end up on there, knowing that they have a couple different ways to do it. Chris, you mentioned the separation. On Twitter I called it the Galaxy Quest separation, where it's like it scrapes across. That's going to be very interesting to see how that works. Good grief.
Galaxy Quest separation. I love it. Oh, I love it.
You saw the animation, right? I mean, where they're going to try and Starlink it off the top, but you have Starship and the booster, and I'm illustrating this on my camera, and the booster's just supposed to go off the bottom of it, and clearly it should be separated when it does it. We'll see if it works out that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wild separation. It is definitely a wild separation system in terms of like how the rockets are, normally separate, where you either have springs or you have pyros or you have bolts that separate them, and Elon's just like, put it into a nose flip.
Just eat it.
And
off the top.
it's one of those things where you hear that and you go, like at 4 kilometers a second, are you insane? Or 3.5, whatever the separation velocity is. But then you sort of stop and you go, right, but it burns for almost 3 minutes, so it's out of the atmosphere. Of course they can flip it at the last second like that and just go, boop, separate.
Matt, your homework is going to be to replicate this in Kerbal Space Program. Just stream it over on Twitch.
I'm pretty sure I've unintentionally done that a few times. So.
Yeah. I think we've all accidentally done that, trying to separate rockets in Kerbal Space Program, where you're just like, don't blow up.
It's rare for me to not flip a rocket at least a few times on the ascent.
It just shows that you're in control. It just shows that you're in control. Like, look at all the control authority this rocket has. It can do a backflip on the way to orbit and still make it.
I put way too much fuel in my rockets because I assume there's going to be flipping on the way up.
It's built into the margins.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Let me grab a couple more questions here. I'm going to hit this one real quick. It's not so much a question from Aaron McCormick. Said, Chris, they're called MUPS. MEWPS for short. Mobile Elevated Working Platforms. I work on these in the UK. I've heard a couple different names for them. So some people from overseas, I've heard MUP before, the Mobile Elevated Working Platform. And then over here, talking with the company that provides them, I've heard them called OPS, AWP, an aerial work platform. So MUPS and OPS, and apparently they're not cherry pickers. Everybody gets
It's
after us every time we say it's a cherry
see,
picker.
it's like color with a U or without.
Yep. But MUPS is another way to refer to them. And let's grab one more question here. We could talk about this one because it's cryo testing. Cryo testing is going to be, or testing is going to be a big topic this week.
Yeah.
Kai asks, do you guys think that Ship 20 will be cryo tested on top of Booster 4? Because that's how they'll fuel it for the orbital test flight.
Eventually, I believe they will.
Yeah.
However, you cannot fuel it on top of the booster until the swing arm
Yeah.
is made. And worth noting too that swim blah 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 blah. You know how like your brain gets like 3 words ahead of the words that are coming out of your mouth, and then you just lose the sentence completely.
Yep.
The arm too is somewhat vital because of how windy it is down in Boca Chica. One thing Elon was talking about too is that arm isn't just to provide the fueling connections for the liquid methane and liquid oxygen for the second stage, because without it you cannot fuel the stage based on how they have redesigned how it fuels at this point. It also serves as a vertical as a vehicle stabilizer. So it does not hold any weight. Like it is not a load bearing arm by any means, but it does just sort of reach out, and with how it grabs onto the side of the ship helps stabilize it in the wind and from being buffeted around by the wind, and helps just stabilize the stack on the mount on the launch mount.
Yeah.
As well. So no, that arm is vital for any type of fueling of Starship at the orbital pad.
Yeah. Really quickly, like it's tough
Sorry,
to get
ship,
a shot
not
of it.
Starship. Ship.
Starship. Geez. It's tough to get a shot of it with the turbulence. Like this time of day, the air is just roiling. So I don't have a live camera that has a great shot of it. But it's that big yellow arm that they've been assembling over there on the landing pad in just the last couple of days. We've seen them start installing these big white pipes on the yellow arm, and those are, in theory, the pipes that'll be carrying the cryogenic liquids, the liquid fuel and the liquid methane and liquid oxygen up into Starship. That was a big change because originally they were going to fuel Starship through the booster using that sort of butt-to-butt refueling thing. I think that's technically the term that Elon used. And then they moved away from that, and we saw a quick disconnect panel on the side of Starship, and then Elon confirming, hanging out with Tim, that they're going to that side attachment for now. And so that big yellow arm needs to be finished and installed on the tower and plumbed all the way down the tower and then over into the tank farm before they could actually put cryogenic liquids in Starship while it's stacked on top of the booster on the orbital launch mount.
And I know we're massively over time already, but I know. But one thing that I did want to hit on that real quick is, like that does follow what Elon's mantra has said. He didn't say this specifically to Tim in the video, but his mantra is always like, design it and then remove it. Simplify it, simplify it, simplify it, simplify it. And one thing that he said that I found really interesting in the convo with Tim, although he didn't outright say it, was that you would end up having all of this equipment that the booster, that it just complicated the booster too much. It was just easier to go boop, switch that to a side, throw the arm on there, and we already kind of needed an arm for vehicle stabilization to begin with. Boom, 3 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah,
done, simpler system, move on. And we'll see if that sticks. I don't know what else to call it, rear to rear, butt to butt. We'll see if that sticks.
Anima refueling.
What? We say that on the stream?
I don't know.
It's medical procedure. It's fine. So it's interesting how far people sort of ran with that, because Elon, when Tim asked, Elon sort of hesitated and said, I don't know if we're going to do the tail to tail, butt to butt, whatever refueling, right? But he didn't confirm that they were going to use the quick disconnects on the side to refuel. And he didn't confirm any of those things.
No, a lot of people
I don't know.
ran with that though, thinking that that's what it would be like on orbit. And to be fair, maybe it will.
Maybe it will.
But maybe the easier way to dock them, but maybe it's the Starships that get the end-to-end plumbing, and they're still fueled from the side, but then when they do the fuel transfer in orbit, maybe that's easier. I don't know. We'll have to see how that sort of evolves, but it is, but and we'll see where that falls on their priority list too.
Yep. It's going to be really interesting to see how all these things shake out. I mean, I know a lot of times people get frustrated. They're like, oh, how do you not know? Why don't you ask somebody? SpaceX doesn't give us these official answers. We get information from Elon, and Elon is very much a creative mind. And a lot of times, the things that he says, oh, we're thinking about, it's not necessarily going to work out that way, but he's thinking through these problems, right?
Well, you saw him literally, and Tim mentioned this last week. You saw him literally make a design change to the ship version, to the ship part of Starship, live talking to Tim when he was like, "Oh
We
yeah,
should
why
look at
wouldn't we
that.
have RCS on Starship if we can just open the vent? We should change. We're gonna change that." Like it changed literally in that moment. But
Yeah,
yes, I know we're massively over and we're geeking out, and we're always over. But
we
welcome
always
to
are.
NSF.
Yeah. Anyways, y'all, 18,000 questions. I'm gonna speed run some super chats real quick. I don't know, Matt. I get you the panel. Do you have the panel, right?
Yeah, I just didn't bring it up yet.
Okay, good. Next time I'll give you more things to do, so that we can we can spread this out some. But let me speed run the super chats here really quickly, y'all. Thomas, thank you so much for the support there. Appreciate you. Jack Varaco, why hasn't SpaceX launched in a month and a half? The pause with what's going on and the Starlinks and everything.
The
Chris,
Starlinks are being readied for shell number 2. So yes, when they are ready, launches of Starlink shall resume. The next not Starlink, the next SpaceX launch is CRS-23 on August 28th.
coming up here in about 14 days, 2 weeks for the next
Indeed.
CRS launch, right? Or the next launch, I guess. Question mark. I think so. 28th.
Yes, 28th. Yeah,
I
14
think
days.
that math works out. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Laura, we appreciate you as well. Thank you for the support. Tim Reedy, thank you as well. We've got Laura here. Oh, apparently Laura put this in a couple times. We appreciate the support, Laura. This is like over and over again. Thank you. Shirty is a new member. We appreciate that. Yes, the salt mine that was discovered under someone's PR department. Jeff, aha, thank you. Musical Wolves as well, naming the queue a couple times. Thomas Anfang. Again, I don't want to leave these hanging. Altom, ATL Tom, maybe it's ATL Tom says for the Lebowski reference. There you go. Appreciate you. Blaine Matlock, Pampalock. It's not a spaceport, it's a starbase. Nice. I'm just running through these. I can't get too bogged down in any of the questions because we're way past our time here. The heat shield tiles falling off, we saw that, but again, that was the first time they did a full ship with heat tiles. They're gonna figure it out. They're going to get information. They're gonna figure these things out. Appreciate you there, Dylan Rules. Love the post-it notes. Jim Cavett, Metamorphize. Just all the way down. Elizabeth Chase, love the Saturday night updates and info. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate you there as well. I want a good name. I don't have any for you. Does anybody have a good name for I want a good name?
Bartholomew.
Bartholomew. There you go. Next time you chat in YouTube chat, I want a good name. Bartholomew is a good name. You heard it here.
Bartholomew of the spaceflight.
Of the space flight.
Yes.
Go. Talking about filling the columns of the OLT with concrete. We have not seen them pumping concrete. We know about the studs. Trust us, we know. We'll see what the deal with that is. Mike Smith, appreciate you. Say you're making a trip down to Boca Chica to verify that SpaceX is really there. We're going to crowdfund whether or not the spaceport exists. If you see any spaceflight related hardware in Boca Chica, Texas, post it up on Twitter or somewhere. Let's see here. Chris K, appreciate you as well. We talked through where the staging area was. Cohn von Megalen, Renzo, Mr. Muskrat, a couple things in there, and a membership. Cool. And then Jim. Jim just says, thanks, Matt. That's all Jim says.
You're welcome, Jim.
Whew. All right. So anyways, y'all, I wanted to run through those really quickly. I didn't spend a lot of time reading them over the course of the show. I tried to pull a couple relevant questions and stuff like that and put it in, but we are way over time now. We're 14 minutes over time. It happens because it's like, talk about space stuff. Well, we can talk about space stuff a lot. Anyways, never able to get through all of them, but we do appreciate all of the support there. Same thing with the questions, like so many questions came through. Can't answer all of them because we always fall in the trap of talking about one question for 10 minutes, but I'm here for it. I like it. Good times. So thank you to everyone with the questions and the super chats. Hey, massive thanks to our members as well, the folks that are there. I know that your name doesn't pop up like every month or anything like that, but I'll put your name on the screen here. The launch directors and flight engineers that support the channel. That is that recurring monthly membership that is fantastic. I know that it doesn't like put your name in chat every time you do $2 or anything like that, but we do not forget about you. We greatly appreciate your support. And you know something, folks? Even if it's not a financial way that you support, if you're just showing up for the show, if you're asking questions, if you're sharing this, put it up on the big screen and make the family watch. Like, YouTube only counts it as one viewer, but that's fine. Like, it's cool. Like, make all family members have their own device so they're accurately counted. No, just put it up on the screen. A little bit much, Matt? Anyways, however you're a part of the community, we do appreciate you being here and sharing in this stuff. Again, this is NASA Spaceflight Live. It's our weekly show. Chris, on the show today, Chris Gebhardt, thank you so much for being here. Y'all have seen Chris's name before, Assistant Managing Editor for NASA Spaceflight.
My absolute pleasure. I mean, yes, always a pleasure to talk about rocketry and spaceflight and this awesome community.
Absolutely. And y'all, you can find Chris. He is over on Twitter. Mods, get a link into chat real quick. If you had a question that we didn't get to today, I know a lot of times Chris takes questions on Twitter as well. So maybe tweet that question over to him at ChrisG_NSF. Link's going to go into chat. That is a thing there. Waiting to see the link in chat. Moderators. Is anybody going to put that in there? We're waiting. I still don't see it. Somebody put a link in chat, please.
I'll
and then also,
hang on.
Chris, self-service, really? We're gonna have a chat with the mod team. Also on the show today, Matt Anderson, a new face here on NASA Spaceflight Live. Matt,
yeah,
thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you. And this is the first stream that I'm officially part of the NASA Spaceflight crew now. So I'm sorry for that.
I'm sorry.
You're gonna, unless they fire me right after this, you're gonna see me more often. But it's been a pleasure. Just it has been the last couple times that I was here. It's always a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And Matt is a good friend from Twitch. He does streaming over on Twitch, twitch.tv/badnewsbaron, and also on Twitter, matches at badnewsbaron, right? Like,
Yep. Just Bad News Baron.
Let's see if we get those links into chat as well for Matt. But over the course of the week, we may be hearing Matt's voice again as we go through a lot of these tests and stuff. So be on the lookout. The lookout, the hear out. I don't know which one it is. Listen for Matt to be on the streams. It's a pleasure to have
notification.
You here, Matt. Notification. There you go. All right. And then also for NASA Spaceflight, I'm John Galloway. If you watch over on Twitch, you may know me as DOS. Sorry about the technical difficulties there today. I know we were all sort of fighting weather here. We do this from home. We're a small, scrappy team bringing you live broadcast by the skin of our teeth. And whatever internet I can get from...
Let me at him. Let me at him.
Spectrum or whatever.
Scrappy do.
We appreciate you hanging in with the technical difficulties there. I apologize for that, but we're doing this from home and sharing this with y'all all over the world.
Plus, who doesn't like to laugh with us or at us? Either
Thank
works.
Goodness.
Yeah,
like luckily we have sort of the SpaceX lean there. Like when something goes wrong, when we blow something up, people are sort of rooting for us as opposed to the Blue Origin lean where something blows up and we're like, told you so, you don't know what you're doing. Like, anyways, that is going to bring us to the end of the live comedy hour and a half plus 22 minutes today. It's NASA Spaceflight Live. We try to do this every Saturday. You'll also have us over the course of the week. Starbase Live going to be staying there the entire time. Remember, when this stream's over, you can go straight to Starbase Live and see if they're going to cut this booster in half. B3 maybe go into the scrapyard. Maybe they're going to fold it into some sort of origami. I don't know. But you can find out by watching Starbase Live. Links in chat for that as well. I think we may actually force you to watch that next. I'm not sure. But anyways, that's going to call it for today. The NASA Spaceflight team is going to shut this down and see you on Starbase Live. I'm going to stop talking and we'll see you nerds.
Bye,
later.
everybody.
Thanks for being with us, y'all.
alarm at all?
RCP chamber pressure looks good. Doubling up.
Water towers fly!
Tango Delta nominal.
Flight down, feet off. Bring in, NC off.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.